Good day, viewers. This is the Tuesday topic of the week for September 12th, 2023. What is this week's topic going to be? Tipflation and tip creep. Because I've been seeing this particular issue popping up a lot lately, and it's something I feel I need to address in this week's topic. And, of course, in America, tipping isn't anything new. It's been around for over 100 years. Maybe as much as 150, according to some estimates. But now, you're being asked to tip the cashier who hands you an empty paper cup over the counter to put your own coffee in. You're being expected to tip the restaurant, self-service restaurant, I might add, cashier who rings up your order and hands you a plate to go put your own food on. You're being asked to tip hotel housekeeping, although they've done nothing for you personally, because they claim that housekeeping duties have been suspended, maybe because there isn't enough staff to cover them, or maybe because they just don't want to give their staff the extra hours. You're being asked to tip a bartender $1 each and every time the bartender hands you a beer. You're being asked to tip the barista at the coffee shop for pouring you a cup of drip coffee, which doesn't take a lot of work to do. Let's just be honest. It's drip coffee, not some fancy highfalutin specialty drink. You're being asked to tip your hairdresser. You're being asked to tip as much as 20 to 30% in many cases. And I myself work in the service industry and have been for years. But in my current position, I do not receive tips. It's not a tipped position. I am employed in the retail sector as of right now, and there are no tips in the retail sector. Only in the food service, beverage service sectors, which I think is a little bit strange. And what I find even more strange is that when people go out to eat at restaurants, and yes, this is true, they'll tip their server based on how attractive he or she is. Attractive servers get higher tips, and not so attractive servers and servers of color get lower tips than the more attractive servers do. And I think the same applies to bartenders as well. And so restaurant tipping is racist, ageist, and lookist, because so many people who wouldn't leave as high a tip for a server who they felt was not attractive enough to receive a high tip. And female servers and bartenders also have to deal with sexual harassment in order to receive their tips. That's another fact that doesn't seem to be talked about that much, but it is true. But back to the topic of tipflation, which is a relatively new thing. Why is it so prevalent now? when corporate greed has existed for anywhere from 30 to 50 years? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm also not sure why fast food workers don't receive tips, but other food workers do. The whole tipping system in America is confusing to me, just as I'm sure it is to many of you as well. It confuses me, but is tipflation becoming more of a thing now? Because employers are becoming greedier and greedier and wanting to keep more and more of their profits for themselves than ever before? That's something that I haven't really looked into, but I kind of suspect that it might be, because it would appear that employers these days, not all of them, but at least some, will do anything, and I do mean anything, to avoid having to pay their employees a fair wage. So, the definition of tip creep is a rise in tip prompts appearing at touchscreen checkouts, but only at certain kinds of businesses. And tip fatigue, also a relatively new term, relates to the backlash from customers who are starting to object to the pressure to tip, especially when they don't feel it's warranted. And we've all been in situations where we didn't feel it was warranted, myself included, because obviously working in the service industry, I'm not rolling in money. My average salary is around $2,800, $3,000 per month, or give or take. That's how much I earn in a month. And in a world in which inflation is skyrocketing all the time, that's not much. So obviously, I don't have a lot of money to throw around on tips, and I'm aware that a lot of other people do not either, including some of you who will watch this. You will understand. But 100 years ago, the only people who did receive tips were people who were receiving the so-called tipped minimum wage, which really hasn't been updated much since the early 20th century. That's an issue for another day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.